Picture this: a 7-year-old girl sits alone on a worn wooden bench outside a courthouse, her tiny legs swinging back and forth as she clutches a stuffed rabbit that's seen better days. Social workers rush past her, lawyers shuffle papers, and families walk by, but nobody stops. When a reporter approaches and asks what she wants most in the world, her answer stops everyone in their tracks: "I just want a real family." What happened next would change not just her life, but challenge everything we think we know about wealth, family, and what it truly means to be rich. In America today, over 400,000 children are trapped in the foster care system. That's equivalent to the entire population of cities like Miami or Cleveland, children who go to sleep each night wondering if anyone will ever choose them permanently. Behind these staggering numbers are individual stories of heartbreak, resilience, and hope that most of us never hear about. 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez had already lived in 6 different homes by the time she made that heartbreaking statement outside the family court in Phoenix, Arizona. Born to a teenage mother struggling with addiction, Emma entered the system at 18 months old. She'd experienced the revolving door of temporary placements, some loving but overwhelmed, others simply going through the motions for the monthly stipend. What makes Emma's story particularly gut-wrenching is how articulate she was about her situation. Child psychologists note that kids in foster care often develop emotional intelligence far beyond their years. They learn to read adults quickly, to adapt to new environments rapidly, and sadly, to protect their hearts from getting too attached. Emma had mastered all these survival skills by age 7. The day that would change everything started like any other court appearance: another attempt to find Emma a permanent placement. Her current foster mother, Mrs. Patterson, was a kind woman in her 60s who'd already raised 4 children of her own. But health issues meant she couldn't commit to adoption. Emma understood this with the painful clarity that comes from too much disappointment. She'd learned not to call anyone Mom or Dad anymore. Marcus Williams wasn't supposed to be at the courthouse that day. The tech entrepreneur, who'd built his software company from a college dorm room into a billion-dollar empire, was there for a completely unrelated business matter, a contract dispute that his lawyers assured him would be resolved quickly. At 38, Marcus had achieved everything society said should make him happy: financial success, recognition, a penthouse apartment with city views that magazines featured in Lifestyles of the Successful articles, but success had come with an unexpected price. Marcus had been so focused on building his company that relationships had taken a back seat. A brief marriage in his early 30s ended amicably but childlessly. His parents had passed away in a car accident 5 years earlier, leaving him without close family. He'd filled the emptiness with work, travel, and philanthropy, but something fundamental was missing. As Marcus waited in the courthouse hallway, checking emails on his phone, Emma's small voice caught his attention. She was talking to her social worker, Sarah Chen, who'd been advocating for Emma for 2 years. "Why doesn't anyone want to keep me forever?" Emma asked. "Am I too much trouble?" Sarah knelt down to Emma's eye level, a gesture Marcus would later learn was characteristic of her patience and compassion. "You're not trouble, sweetheart. Sometimes it just takes time to find the right match. Your forever family is out there." Emma's response hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I don't think they are. I think God forgot to make a family for me." Marcus found himself frozen, his phone forgotten in his hand. Here was this tiny person carrying a pain he recognized, the deep loneliness that money couldn't fix, success couldn't heal, and achievements couldn't fill. In that moment, he saw his own childhood self, though his circumstances had been vastly different. Marcus's own story began with loss, though wrapped in privilege. His parents, both successful doctors, had struggled with infertility for years before adopting him from South Korea when he was 6 months old. They'd provided everything: the best schools, opportunities, unconditional love. But they'd also worked 80-hour weeks, leaving Marcus with a succession of nannies and after-school programs. The irony wasn't lost on him now. He'd been chosen, wanted, legally and permanently part of a family from infancy, yet he'd often felt alone. Emma, sitting on that courthouse bench, was experiencing the raw version of what he'd felt in diluted form throughout his privileged childhood: the fundamental human need to belong somewhere, to someone, permanently and unconditionally. Marcus's parents had died before he'd had a chance to truly understand their sacrifices, their love, their fears about whether they'd done enough. Their deaths had sent him spiraling into workaholic patterns, as if achievement could somehow honor their memory or fill the void their absence created. Now, watching Emma swing her legs on that bench, Marcus realized he'd been running from the very thing this little girl was desperately seeking: real connection, authentic family, the kind of love that isn't conditional on performance or success. The business meeting that had brought him to the courthouse suddenly seemed insignificant. His lawyers could handle contract disputes. But here, in this sterile hallway filled with broken families and legal procedures, was something that demanded his attention in a way nothing had in years. What Marcus did next wasn't planned, wasn't logical, and certainly wasn't what his business advisors would have recommended. He approached Sarah Chen and introduced himself, asking about Emma's situation. Sarah, protective of her young client and wary of well-meaning strangers who might not understand the complexities of foster care, initially kept the conversation brief, but Marcus persisted, not with the aggressive determination that had built his business empire, but with something quieter and more genuine. He asked Sarah to coffee, then to dinner, spending hours learning about the foster system, about Emma's history, about what it would mean to become an adoptive parent. Mr. Williams, Sarah said during their third meeting, Emma has been let down by a lot of adults who meant well initially. She's built walls that are pretty high for a 7-year-old. This isn't like hiring an employee or acquiring a company. You can't approach this like a business problem to be solved. Marcus nodded, understanding more than Sarah realized. I'm not looking to solve her, Sarah. I'm looking to belong somewhere too. The home study process was intensive. Social workers examined every aspect of Marcus's life: his finances, his emotional readiness, his support systems, his motivations. They were particularly concerned about a single male entrepreneur with no parenting experience wanting to adopt a girl who'd experienced trauma. During one particularly challenging session, the social worker asked Marcus directly, "What happens when the novelty wears off? When Emma has nightmares, behavioral issues, or academic struggles? When being a parent interferes with your business interests?" Marcus's answer came from a place deeper than his business success: "Then we figure it out together. That's what families do." The arranged meeting between Marcus and Emma took place at a child-friendly restaurant, with Sarah present as a buffer. Emma, coached by experience to be polite to potential families, sat quietly picking at her chicken nuggets. She'd been disappointed too many times to get excited about another adult who might want her, for a while. Marcus had prepared conversation topics, brought a small gift, a book about a girl who builds robots, and rehearsed how to interact with a 7-year-old. But when he sat across from Emma, all his preparations fell away. "I heard you like to draw," he said, noticing the sketch pad she'd brought. Emma nodded but didn't elaborate. Sarah had warned him that Emma had become increasingly withdrawn with each failed placement. "I'm not very good at drawing," Marcus continued. "I mostly draw stick figures that look like they're having accidents." This earned him a tiny smile, the first crack in Emma's armor. Over the next hour, Marcus didn't try to impress Emma with promises of toys or trips or a big house. Instead, he listened as she talked about her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hoppers, who'd been with her through every placement. He admired her drawings of houses with big windows and families holding hands. He told her about his own stuffed animal from childhood, a teddy bear named Einstein who still sat on a shelf in his office. "Why Einstein?" Emma asked, showing the first spark of genuine curiosity. "Because I thought if I named him something smart, maybe some of it would rub off on me." Emma giggled, a sound that Sarah later told Marcus she hadn't heard in months. As the meeting wound down, Marcus knelt beside Emma's chair. "Emma, I know you've met a lot of grown-ups who said they might want to be your family. I don't want to be just another disappointment. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. "If you could design the perfect family, what would it look like?" Emma thought for a long moment. "It would be people who don't go away. Even when I'm sad or make mistakes. People who remember my birthday and know that I don't like vegetables mixed with my rice. People who read stories before bed and don't get mad when I have bad dreams. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That sounds like exactly the kind of family everyone deserves. The adoption process took 8 months, 8 months of supervised visits, overnight stays, family counseling sessions, and gradual integration. Marcus learned that parenting wasn't an acquisition to be managed but a relationship to be nurtured daily through countless small moments. Emma's first night in Marcus's home was terrifying for both of them. She clutched Mr. Hoppers and asked 17 times if she could really stay. Marcus, who'd negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself equally anxious about whether he could be the father Emma needed. The early weeks were challenging in ways Marcus's business experience hadn't prepared him for. Emma had nightmares that sent her running to his room at 3 a.m. She hoarded food in her dresser drawer, a behavior learned from homes where meals weren't guaranteed. She tested boundaries constantly, waiting for him to send her away like others had, but Marcus had something that many of Emma's previous placements hadn't: unlimited patience born from his own understanding of loss and the financial freedom to prioritize his new role as a father. He rearranged his work schedule, brought Emma to some business meetings when childcare fell through, and slowly began building the trust that Emma needed. The breakthrough came 3 months after Emma moved in permanently. She'd been struggling with a school project about family trees, tearfully explaining that she didn't have enough family to fill the assignment. Marcus sat with her at the kitchen table, looking at the blank poster board. "You know what?" he said. "Let's make a different kind of tree. Let's make a tree of all the people who care about you now." Together, they filled the poster with names and photos: Marcus at the center, Sarah the social worker who'd advocated for Emma, Mrs. Patterson who still sent birthday cards, Marcus's business partner who'd become Uncle Dave, neighbors who'd welcomed Emma with homemade cookies, teachers who celebrated her progress. "Look at that," Marcus said, stepping back to admire their work. "You've got a forest, not just a tree." Emma stared at the poster, then at Marcus. "Does this mean I get to keep you forever?" Marcus knelt down, a gesture he'd learned from Sarah, and looked directly into Emma's eyes. "Emma Rodriguez Williams, you're stuck with me for life. And I'm pretty stubborn when I decide I want something." That night, for the first time since moving in, Emma didn't wake up from nightmares. Emma's transformation wasn't just personal, it was academic, social, and emotional. With the security of knowing she had a permanent home, her grades improved dramatically. She joined the school art club and discovered a talent for painting that amazed her teachers. More importantly, she began forming friendships with classmates, no longer afraid to get attached to people who might disappear from her life. Marcus discovered that becoming a father changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The relentless drive that had built his business empire softened into a more sustainable ambition. He still worked hard, but he also coached Emma's soccer team, attended school plays, and learned to braid hair through YouTube tutorials. His company culture shifted too. Marcus implemented family-friendly policies he'd never considered before: on-site childcare, flexible schedules for parents, adoption assistance programs. His employees, many of whom were parents themselves, responded with increased loyalty and productivity, but perhaps the most significant change was Marcus's perspective on wealth and success. Before Emma, he'd measured his worth in stock prices and profit margins. Now, success looked like Emma running to greet him after school, her artwork covering his office walls, and the sound of her laughter filling his previously silent penthouse. The financial cost of raising Emma was negligible compared to his wealth. The school tuition, art supplies, soccer cleats, and college fund were drops in his considerable bucket. But the emotional investment was everything he'd never known he was capable of giving. Marcus began speaking at foster care fundraisers, sharing their story not to seek praise, but to challenge other successful people to consider whether their definitions of achievement were too narrow. "I thought I was rich before Emma," he would tell audiences. "I had no idea how poor I actually was." Emma and Marcus's story became a catalyst for change in ways neither of them expected. Local media coverage led to national attention, but more importantly, it inspired action. 3 other executives in Marcus's network began the adoption process after hearing their story. A foundation was established to provide financial assistance to families adopting older children from foster care. Sarah Chen, the social worker who'd facilitated their match, noted that inquiries about adopting older children increased by 300% in their region following the publicity around Emma and Marcus's story. People saw that you don't have to be a traditional family to be a real family, she explained. Single parents, older parents, people who thought they'd missed their chance, they realized that what matters is commitment and love. Emma, now 10 years old and 3 years into her adoption, became an inadvertent advocate for foster children. She spoke at fundraising events with the poise of someone who'd found her voice through finding her place. Every kid needs someone who won't give up on them, she would tell audiences, her words carrying the weight of lived experience. The ripple effects extended beyond adoption advocacy. Marcus's company partnered with local schools to provide technology resources, with Emma helping to design programs that would have appealed to her during her years in the foster system. They created mentorship opportunities, art therapy programs, and educational initiatives specifically designed to support children in temporary living situations. Today, Emma Rodriguez-Williams is a thriving teenager who wants to study social work in college, following in Sarah Chen's footsteps to help other children find their forever families. Her childhood drawings of houses with big windows and families holding hands have evolved into detailed plans for improving the foster care system. Marcus, now in his mid-40s, often reflects on that day in the courthouse when a 7-year-old's whispered wish changed both their lives. The little girl who thought God had forgotten to make her a family had actually been waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right alignment of need and capacity for love. Their story challenges our assumptions about family, wealth, and fulfillment in profound ways. Marcus learned that all his business success meant nothing without someone to share it with, to invest in, to love unconditionally. Emma learned that families aren't just biological connections, they're chosen commitments, daily decisions to show up for each other, and the courage to believe you're worthy of permanent love. The courthouse bench where Emma once sat alone, swinging her legs and clutching Mr. Hoppers, now holds other children waiting for their forever families. Some will find traditional two-parent homes. Others might join single-parent families, older parents, or blended families created by choice rather than biology. What Emma and Marcus's story teaches us is that family isn't defined by matching DNA or traditional structures, it's created by the radical decision to choose each other, every single day, through nightmares and soccer games, homework struggles and birthday celebrations. Ordinary moments and extraordinary challenges. Emma still has Mr. Hoppers, though the stuffed rabbit now shares space on her bookshelf with soccer trophies, art awards, and photos of the family forest they created together. Marcus still works hard, but he also knows the irreplaceable joy of being called Dad by someone who chose to trust him with that title. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most profound wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's counted in bedtime stories, school pickup hugs, and the security of knowing someone will love you whether you succeed or fail, whether you're happy or sad. Whether you're 7 years old on a courthouse bench or 17 years old heading to college, the little girl who murmured, "I just want a real family," found something more valuable than she'd even known to ask for. She found home. And in finding her home, she helped a successful but lonely man discover that he'd been looking for the same thing all along. Emma and Marcus's story is just one of thousands happening right now across the country. There are children sitting on courthouse benches today, hoping someone will choose them permanently. There are adults who have achieved success by every measure except the one that matters most, connection, purpose, and love. That if their story moved you, consider what role you might play in changing the narrative for children in foster care. Whether it's adoption, fostering, mentorship, donation, or advocacy, every action matters. Because somewhere out there is a child whispering the same wish Emma made years ago, and maybe, just maybe, you're the answer they've been waiting for. Like this video if Emma and Marcus's story touched your heart. Subscribe to hear more stories about the extraordinary power of ordinary people choosing love over convenience, courage over comfort, and connection over success. And share this in the comments. What does real family mean to you?